And I'll leave it to
Thanks very much, Richard. I am going to use the microphone, and I was thinking during that speech, I wonder whether people make up their mind whether I'm going to vote for you in the first 3 seconds, in which case I probably need to buy a new suit. So I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, and I thank all of you for coming here this evening. I've shown a bit of business acumen myself, actually, and I've outsourced a large chunk of the work involved in preparing this speech to Kevin down the front here. Kevin's a consultant at Deloitte, and he helps business engage with government, and I've ruthlessly exploited him. I want to thank him up front for his assistance. All the mistakes are mine, all the glory is his. I'm privileged, extraordinarily privileged to have been pre-selected as the Labor candidate for Melbourne a couple of months ago now. It feels like a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. I'm a lawyer by training, don't hold it against me, and I've spent my career working in human rights, education and employment, and I've also worked in trade and international development. I'll start with a couple of observations about Melbourne, which is where I live. We've got an extremely diverse mix of industries here. Construction and manufacturing businesses employ over 25,000 people in the cities of Melbourne and Yarra, although many of these workers do actually live elsewhere. Healthcare and social services account for another 44,000 or so jobs, and education and training 28,000 more. But by far the biggest cohort are the white-collar professionals like myself, commonly associated with the inner city, people the ABS calls professional, scientific and technical services workers, or more appealingly, the knowledge workers. And they are by far the largest percentage of employees in Melbourne. There are 77,000 of them, and they include lawyers like myself, architects, scientists, managers, consultants, vets, advertising professionals and digital and design workers. It's also a sector that's particularly susceptible to digital disruption, and that's the topic of my speech today. So since 2000, the Australian economy has grown by about 46%, but that growth has been unequal. The Melbourne CBD alone has recorded 76% growth over that period, which means that it's added more value than any other region of Australia. Victoria has over 500,000 small businesses, and over 40,000 of them are located in Melbourne. So alongside this economic growth comes population growth, and Melbourne is tipped to overtake Sydney as the biggest city in Australia by 2056. Now this presents obviously challenges, but also enormous opportunities, particularly given that we're in the midst of what many are calling a technological revolution of the same impact of the Industrial Revolution. So what's going on? Digital disruption is essentially the impact of new digital technologies on existing business models, on existing employment relationships, and on industry structures. A recent report from the Committee for Economic Development finds that 40% of Australia's workforce, that's over 5 million people, will be out of a job, replaced by automation within the next 10 to 20 years. That's not too far away. Some high-profile examples include disruption to the taxi industry. I was talking to my cabbie on the way here about it, caused by Uber and other ride-sharing platforms, or the impact on hotel and accommodation businesses by sites like Airbnb. So this is not a new phenomenon, but we're seeing an enormously accelerated rate of change and an increased scale of disruption. Predicting what this change is going to look like is not possible for me to do here, but I think the only certainty is uncertainty. Adaptability will be rewarded and complacency will be punished. So some of the key, I think, questions will be: what role will broadband play in the delivery of, for example, health services? What role will algorithms play in the delivery of financial, accounting and, in fact, legal services? One day lawyers might be out of a job, which would be a very interesting world to live in. Perhaps a much nicer one. Much cheaper. All the small business owners are giving me evils. And what does it mean to be an Australian retailer in a increasingly globally connected marketplace? And once we have digitised our jobs, where do we look for the job to? Where do we look to for the jobs of the future. And these are not theoretical, remote questions, they're real questions that governments need to be thinking about and businesses need to be thinking about right now. So Australians expect technology to improve efficiencies and productivity, but also to contribute, I think, as Cameron said, to a fair and equitable society. 23 years of uninterrupted economic growth has seen an explosion in living standards for the majority of Australians. But economic growth on its own means little if we don't share the benefits equally. The data tells us as unemployment rises, so do incidents of family violence, substance abuse, mental health issues, and conversely, the social and health benefits of employment are very well documented. Employment is dignity, and if we want a healthy, happy society, we need flourishing businesses to underpin that shared prosperity. So what can we do? What can governments do? And I've had conversations with small business owners already about the numerous things that governments can do to support small business and business generally. I'm pleased to say that Federal Labor's announced a number of policies in key areas to help businesses leverage Australia's competitive advantages. And those three areas are, firstly, the availability of finance. The recent Startup Economy study undertaken by PwC and commissioned by Google Australia projected that in the right conditions, high-growth technology companies could contribute to 4% of GDP, or over 109 billion, and add 540,000 jobs to the Australian economy by 2033. It's an impressive number. In the wake of this report, Labor will work with the banking and financial services industry to develop startup finance, a partial guarantee scheme which will support the development of Australian micro-businesses by improving their access to finance. Labor will also create a new $500 million smart investment fund which will back in great Australian ideas and turn them into great Australian businesses. Further, the Smart Investment Fund will partner with venture capitalists and licensed fund managers to co-invest in early stage and high potential companies, providing a Commonwealth investment of up to 50% of the startup capital needed to help Australian companies commercialise their innovations. The second area is skills, as a number of speakers have mentioned already. So Labor's going to offer 100,000 science, technology, engineering and maths degrees, or STEM degrees, which will see graduates' entire HECS and health debts written off. At present, an average science graduate will pay off an enormous 44,000 HECS debt over 8 years, and under Labor these students will graduate HECS debt free. Labor will also seek to boost the STEM enrolments in underrepresented groups, including women, which is enormously important to leverage the skills that we've got in underrepresented groups. So the idea is that this policy would attract more students to STEM studies while freeing graduates from debt burden that can act as a disincentive to people taking risks and embarking on the entrepreneurialism that we need to foster desperately. Labor's also going to ensure that computer coding is taught in every primary and secondary school in Australia so that the next generation have the skills they need for the jobs of the future. We're behind on this. More than a dozen countries in Europe are already teaching computer coding, so we're catching up. New Zealand and Singapore are currently in the process of introducing this. You know, coding is the literacy of the 21st century. Every young Australian should be able to read and write the global language of the digital age. And finally, infrastructure. Investing in infrastructure is absolutely vital to the success of business. Labor plans to increase the role of Infrastructure Australia by increasing its funding and moving it from a passive body to an active participant in the infrastructure market, working in the national interest to bring projects to completion. So here in Victoria, the Andrews Labor government has also committed 60 million in this year's budget to a startup initiative in order to match local entrepreneurs and business mentors and help get their ideas off the ground. And we're talking about abolishing all payroll tax. Well, they're going to create 100,000 new jobs by offering payroll tax relief to companies who hire unemployed youth and retrenched workers, so it's a good start. Victoria is also investing in sectors where Victoria is poised to lead the world, including some sectors that we've spoken about already this evening: medical technology and pharmaceuticals, new energy technology, international education and professional services. We need many more policies like these if we're going to transition successfully and retain our place as global leaders in the new century. and the reality is we need Labor governments to deliver them. Labor takes forward-thinking approaches to new and emerging industries, including clean energy and emission reduction technologies. So to wrap up, I want to repeat my thanks to Melbourne Labor, to Daniel White in particular for organising this forum, and to each and every one of you for coming along. I'd like to thank the speakers that have come before me. I've learned a huge amount this evening, and I'm looking forward to the remaining speeches. Thank you.